the International Center for Biosaline Agriculture, Somali Disaster Resilience Institute, and the International Fund for Agricultural Development, I would like to welcome you to today's seminar that aims to discuss and brainstorm how to set up effective partnerships amongst our institutions to build resilience to drought and climate change. So I now like to welcome Sheikh Bashir bin Uthman for a recital from the Holy Quran before starting officially our event.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. ألم تر أن الله أنزل من السماء ماء فأخرجنا به ثمرات مختلفا ألوانها ومن الجبال جدد بيض وحمر مختلف ألوانها وغرابيب سود ومن الناس والدواب والأنعام مختلف ألوانه كذلك إنما يخشى الله من عباده العلماء إن الله عزيز غفور أقاموا الصلاة وأنفقوا مما رزقناهم سرا وعلانية يرجون تجارة لن تبور ليوفيهم أجورهم ويزيدهم من فضله إنه غفور شكور. صدق الله العظيم.
Thank you. So I would like to ask you to join me in welcoming Mr. Khalil Amiri, Secretary of State for Scientific Research in Tunisia, for his opening remarks.
Dear ministers, dear Director General of ICBA, dear esteemed guests, ladies and gentlemen, dear colleagues, good morning. It is a pleasure for me to be here with you today. The theme of the annual meeting is partnership, and this event is also a partnership. And I think what we'll be discussing today is a perfect example of why we need to partner, because the challenge of climate change, drought, and food security is a challenge not only for Somalia, but for many member countries, and in particular for this region, also North Africa, where we're going through observable changes in terms of climate and water resources. And since these challenges are shared, it's only normal and natural that we seek shared solutions and partnerships. I think that research and innovation in particular, and I'm responsible for this country, has a lot to offer. We have significant capacities in the various member countries, and I think we need to put these science, technology, and innovation capacities in the service of sustainable development and priorities like climate change, food security, and water resource management. The capacities exist, but I think we need programs and policies to align these capacities with the challenges and the opportunities. This is, I think, something that in Tunisia we also discovered the same thing. We have significant STI capacities, but they are not aligned with the biggest challenges. So we worked on a participatory process of elaborating priorities for the research and innovation system. 6 priorities, of course. Water, energy and food nexus emerged as one of the key priorities. Now, once these are identified, we need to align systems also to make sure that the capacities work on these challenges. So we migrated to a competitive funding system instead of a block funding system based on calls for proposals aligned with these priorities. I think the reason probably why I'm discovering our capacities in terms of research innovation within universities and research centers are not aligned with working on the regions and the priorities is that the incentive systems are not really encouraging our researchers to work on these challenges. A lot of our researchers in the member countries seek publications, and publications and journals tend to focus on priorities of where these journals actually start. So the research agenda of the region kind of gets lost because the main motivator for researchers is to publish and to publish in journals and funded by research that is aligned with probably other priorities. I think climate change, water resource management, food security is clearly one of the top SDGs. It's a priority for the member countries. We have significant capacity in the various countries, and we're looking forward for ICBA, SDRI, and various basically leaders in this area to maybe help put us together to work on challenges that are not only a priority for Somalia very soon, and increasingly these challenges will actually be facing many member countries, including this region. I just would like to say that I'm very happy that concurrently with this event, the Islamic Development Bank is launching the Transform Fund, a $500 million fund to support innovation, because I think we need to have more resources and to help these capacities work on these challenges. And this fund is very important. And the associated, as I understand it, Engage platform, which is, I think, an online platform that will network all the stakeholders in innovation ecosystems in the member countries, also is something that is can prove very useful. Before concluding, I'll just say one thing, that our country is very motivated to work with our partners on these challenges, and we have some specific things to offer. Tunisia is, for instance, a partner in a Mediterranean initiative that's called PRIMA, Partnership for Research and Innovation in the Mediterranean Area, which is a $40–50 million program to work on these priorities: agriculture, water resource management, food security, and climate change and environment. Same thing, we are a member country of the Horizon 2020 European Research and Innovation Program, which is an $80 billion program, roughly $10 billion a year. It's PRIMA and Horizon 2020, different scales, just like also probably the Transform Fund, are competitive, basically call-based financing mechanisms. So getting funding depends on the quality of the proposal. But there is a big incentive for countries to partner with countries outside of the Mediterranean and European framework program. So for us, since we are a member country, we could actually partner with countries like Somalia, like other countries in the region, member countries, because actually these projects are given to proposals that have big, wide impact and wide consortia. So for us, it makes our proposals more competitive, and also it enables us to work on shared challenges and conjugate the effort of the various institutions in member countries to face what are shared challenges. I think, in my experience in the last couple of years, in this region, there is significant innovation capacity. There's a lot of interesting research in biotechnology and working on plants that are more resistant to climate change and to drought and to salinity. There is a lot of work in water resource management, water modeling, extending the water cycle, desalination. However, the efforts are a little bit desperate and all over the place. So we need to bring them together and work on these shared priorities. And there is no better way to partner than in science and innovation. Science has no boundaries. And therefore, people who work in this area should not basically have any boundaries between them. So I'd like in the end to just thank ICBA and SDRI for organizing this, affirm our basically interest in working with our partners, both so that they can benefit from the funding mechanisms that are available to our country and our region, but also to work together to benefit from opportunities like Transform and others. And regardless of funding opportunities, I think there's a need and an urgency to actually define a common research agenda, which certainly this theme will be one of the top areas in it, and work together so that our capacities are aligned with the needs and demands of our region. I would like in the end to renew a warm welcome on the behalf of the government of Tunisia and its people, and wish you a pleasant stay while you are here, and wish you a very fruitful discussion. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Your Excellency. Next, please join me in welcoming Mr. Amadou Diallo, the Director of Economic and Social Infrastructure Department at the Islamic Development Bank.
Good morning. First of all, let me apologize for the Vice President that managed to have in place this meeting, because it's important for us that senior management is aware of the problematics we have in our member countries. Yesterday I met these two gentlemen in the corridor. I watched them. We're talking about disaster management in Somalia with passion. And I loved it, because if we have our people in our member countries very passionate about climate change, about sustainable development, it's important for us. We are only financiers. We bring money. Sometimes we do capacity building, we do research. But if we don't have people on the ground that are able and capable of implementing whatever we decide to do, then it's a failure. So let me again tell you how much I appreciate it. Both of you, I watched you talking to the bank, the Islamic Development Bank, is going through a reform that started in January 1st. What is important for that reform is we created a department for resilience and social development. And within that department, we have climate change. Other institutions have been talking about climate change for a long time, but we were not party to those discussions. And today, we are around the table, and we are building our own capacity, and we'll be happy to discuss on the way forward, because we need everybody's support. with our counterparts and the other MDBs, I used to tell them we are different than them. They said, how? I said, we have ICBA. ICBA is part of the Islamic Development Bank. And the other institutions, they don't. World Bank doesn't have ICBA, the African Development Bank doesn't, the Asian Development Bank doesn't. And ICBA has been on the map for a long time, and they have developed competencies, capacities that can help our member countries. So, Ismahan, I need to say those board to encourage ICBA to keep doing whatever they are doing and to help our member countries. So with that, again, I apologize for the Vice President's big call for the meeting. These are the annual meeting. We have a lot of meetings that we have not scheduled, so it's an emergency, so let me apologize for him. And we are looking forward to the discussion that's going to happen today. And as an institution, we will do whatever we need to do to help Somalia manage its climate change issues. We can help with capacity. So basically, we are listening to the conclusion of this meeting, and we will be happy to take the board forward. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Amanda, for the encouraging words. Next, I'd like to convey the apologies of His Excellency Minister Syed Hussein and Abdirrahman, who were not able to join due to a national emergency in Somalia. But on their behalf, I would like to welcome to the stage Mr. Muhammad Osman. He will be delivering the keynote speech on behalf of His Excellency Minister.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وبه نستعين على أمور الدنيا والدين وصلى الله وبارك وسلم على الحبيب المصطفى السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. Brothers and sisters, excellencies, dignitaries, representatives from the government of Tunisia, representatives from colleagues from the Islamic Development Bank, other donors who are present in this room, and the wider participants and friends who really accepted our invitation. I would like to really welcome you to this event and to share with you the story of Somalia. Let me to reiterate our deep apologies for not having the two ministers to join us today, as they had national matters to address in the country. But inshallah, I will be bringing their deep-hearted message to this gathering. First of all, Somalia has come a long way from 1990s, right at the start of the civil war and the state collapse. And today we are in 2018, whereby the Somali government and the Somali people are taking a new direction in terms of rebuilding the state building, in terms of peace building processes, but also bringing a strong inclusion of all sectors and groups and actors in Somali people to join the peace building and state building process. The Minister Saeed, Minister of Agriculture and Irrigation in Somalia, is conveying his message to the all friends who really helped us organize this event, and reassuring for the partners from the IDP and others that Somalia is committed to working with international actors and partners, making sure that we continue the journey to build the resilience of the Somali people. We've worked on a small presentation highlighting the key issues, the situation in Somalia, and the key challenges we are facing in terms of building resilience and food security in Somalia. And can we have it? Yeah, the presentation, yes. Yes. you know, in 2017, Somalia faced severe drought, but thanks to the support of the international community and the support of the Somali people, we have been working hard to make sure that the drought does not really turn into a widespread famine that takes millions of the Somali people's lives, as happened in 2011. But that said, the challenges continue in the country, and while drought is a natural phenomena, there are other issues that can be tackled that is not ready in the country in terms of water infrastructure, in terms of food security infrastructure, and in terms of the economic empowerment of local communities to be able to be resilient to the drought. Yes, you can play the slides. Yeah. So the situation in the country in 2017, for instance, in February 2017, the country, we had a very massive drought that really happened, and it affected lives of millions of people. And but thanks to the partners and the Somali people, we've been able to manage to not to reach the level of crisis into famine. You can continue next. But when you look at Somalia as a country, and when you look at that index, it's very shocking. The country is the least, actually, the very most vulnerable country in terms of climate change effect. And when you compare to the list, Somalia is actually the very bottom on the list. So that's very shocking for us and the ministry in Somalia, and also the Somali people. And that's why I think this is not going to be something the Somali people alone can tackle. It's a global phenomena, and I think such gathering and such kind of events will help not only generate learning, but also interest and readiness to really address this issue. Can go next. The challenge, the natural challenges of climate and drought do not only really happen to be very natural, but also they affect the social fabric of our communities. Somalia is facing massive internal displacement due to the drought. Communities are migrating from one location to another location, but there is no safe place, you know, as the country is naturally in a semi-arid area, and the natural habitation and the natural resources are really being depleted, either by natural factors or by the years and years of lack of governance and proper management of natural resources. You can go next. It is natural that, you know, once you have droughts and famines happen, food security is the first thing that falls into be victim. So the Somali people, over 6 to 6 million people of Somalis are in food secure, and they really need support. And actually, the prediction is for 2018 is quite alarming, with over $700 million needed to really invest in food security and prevent drought. If you look at in terms of livestock, Somalia's economy is mainly relying on livestock and agriculture. And if you look at the blue and the green, I think, bars, if you compare that, 60% of the livestock actually were lost during the drought, and from 2017 January to 2017 December. So that's really very shocking, because livestock is a major livelihood infrastructure for the Somali people, and once you have that down actually to earth, you know, you're really facing a widespread crisis. And if you go to the next slide, the reason is yeah, that's a different slide, but one of the main reasons is that this is happening is some of them are preventable. And if we come together and work together hard, they could be prevented. Issues like water and pasture and getting fodder, you know, the main reason is, you know, the livestock being lost. And Somalia as a country, we have a plenty of water, underground and rain, but there is lack of water resource management, and that is something that can be addressed, but it's not happening. And I think such kind of meetings and gatherings is where we can gather support and knowledge to be able to address that. The Somalia is a very young nation. 70% of our population are youth, below 15 years old. So you can imagine the recurrent crisis coming from natural disasters and a conflict is really taking a big challenge to our people. If for every drought that happens, let alone other things that are happening in the country, conflict, whatever, is taking
thousands of Somali children out of school. So you have quite a large number of Somali children who are not going to school, which as the minister really stressed, that is not going to really have a social problem, but it's also a security problem to the country. So we think that that drought is not only really taking the lives but at the moment, but also is really putting the Somalia's future in danger. In terms of health, and it's really catastrophic in terms of the communities, the lower bottom of the communities accessing basic health services, and which is very shocking. At the moment, our government in Somalia, due to years of conflict, it doesn't provide public health services at large. Most of the health services are provided by the private sector, and other support coming from international donors. The drought impact is not only affecting health, but also social protection and safety nets, which is really affecting the Somali people. 3 to 4, 5 million people are actually in need, and the massive displacement and the refugee crisis we have in the country is really taking a major lot of problems into the basic safety net. But one thing has to be highlighted, that traditionally Somali people are really resilient, and in terms of really having a strong social network at community level. But what we are missing is that holistic national kind of safety protection and safety net, that's missing. But the Somali people within themselves, they are really delivering a lot for themselves. Shelter and all those issues are really also in risk and in danger because of the massive displacement and also rapid urbanization. A lot of people who were pastoralists and agro-pastoralists are no longer really staying in their areas. Somalia, we used to call it a pastoral and agro-pastoral community, and they are rural communities. Actually, the cities have been overflooded by people who are coming, and every drought brings thousands and thousands who are not really willing to go back, because there is no reason they can go back. And I think that's a major risk we are facing in terms of managing urban crisis. Water and sanitation is also a major issue in the country. With the water we have, even though naturally the water could have been sufficient in the country, but because of lack of proper management and proper use of water is really causing sanitation issues in the country. Yes. This is the drought impact on rain pattern in the country, and if you look at most of the countries is really under rain stress. It hasn't been raining very well, and that is really affecting the growth of the natural vegetation, where the animals could have been grazed, and also the farmers who are quite far from the rivers could have used for farming. So the challenge, yeah, you can continue. I want to cover it. So I think that said, Somalia is not hopeless. The country for over 25 years, since 1991, the private sector and the local Somali people have really stood up. They have been able to work hard to establish education, health services, telecommunication, one of the cheapest actually telecom rates in the world, or I think at least in Arab world, and also other services, electricity, water, transportation infrastructure. They have been really tried to maintain. So initially the private sector started as individual efforts, individual movements that were trying, but over time they also realized the need to come together and put together networks that can deliver social issues, because at the end of the day, the private sector, what they care about is not only about the money they are making from people, but also the purchasing power. So over time, they realize that if the purchasing power of the local Somalis really going down, there is no reason to do business. So they have been really working hard into making networks that can deliver for the country. A good example is the local Somali diaspora. The diaspora is really a huge population of our people, and if we know that through the remittances they were sending, Somalia has been able to establish a strong remittance industry, and that remittance really helped drive different services in the country where families were able to purchase with that little money. But over time, the remittance industry and has grown, And today we have banks in Somalia that grew out of the simple remittance agencies. And those banks were able to really now establish deposits. Because families back in the past, where when your daughter or your son sends $100 from the UK, you just keep it in your bucket or you keep it in your room and then you use it for your normal issues. But now people are able to deposit those monies. And now that has generated local investments where the local Somali banks are able to really invest local programs and local projects. Today we have in Somalia 5 major banks, and who are all able to really issue loans and support to the local investors. But that is not sufficient because when you're relying only the local struggling economy, the deposits from the local people is really very short. It's very limited. You cannot really commit long-term investments. You cannot commit 6 to 10-year investment from local simple deposits that have been collected from the local people. They have now come up to really establish networks. Just to give you an example, that the banks are now coming together to establish networks that can really support internal lending and also support all of that. So I think that is just an example from banks, but also other sectors are also doing the same thing, coming together. For instance, the healthcare industry in Somalia, 99% or 95% are offered by the private sector. So they also establish networks that can work together to take care of the poor and come up pricing models that can work for the poor, that can help the poor access services. For instance, some of the hospitals, they may have their own services, but they also come up with outreach programs where the poor can buy the same service but at lower cost. So the private sector is among the, we can say, is a successful story for 25 years in Somalia, and I think we have a short video to play. Before we go to the short video, I think these were the key issues we are now looking in the country is basically focusing now the long term and working the successful stories of Somalia and building on what's working in Somalia rather than repeating again and again what hasn't worked or what hasn't really delivered well. So we think that we had 30 years of short-term investments, 6-month humanitarian intervention, 6-month wash, 6-month food distribution. But today, I think the Somali people have been able to come up, key investments, key sectors that can be tapped in by the international investors, by the international development banks that can really deliver for the local people. Because already we know the aid in the country is, in terms of dollars, they say is around $2 billion. But if you look at the potential capacity of the Somali diaspora is over $10 billion investment. So when you compare, there is a huge opportunity that can be utilized. In conclusion, I think I would like to play that video to show you how specifically the agriculture sector in Somalia, how the local people, the local communities are investing their own resources and producing different crops and actually working hard to mechanize the process by themselves and also trying to really ready Somalia for export market. So this is all happening within the private sector. And that's actually the new government in Somalia, they see their role is totally different from the governments we had in 1980s and in 1990s. Our government is now seen as one of the players in the market to make sure regulation and fair management of the resources. But the private sector are the ones who are leading all this. Maybe we can play that video. Yes, this is the Minister Said. He's speaking in Somali. So he's explaining, this was a farmer's day in Somalia, and he had spent a day with the Somali private sector farmers. So this is. Yeah, thank you very much. This is the story of the private sector and what the private sector are doing. The clip you've watched, some of these investments are mega investments where the private sector have been able to really locally mobilize and set up. For instance, the factory you looked at, it has huge storage capacity to buy from the farmers and processes it and store it and also take it to external market in the region and also in Asia and in other countries. So I think I will leave the rest of the day for our discussion. But in conclusion, having said a lot of really disasters and bad things about Somalia, I think there is a time now, we have a very good time to now focus on what is working in Somalia and what's working for the Somali people. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Muhammad. So it is that passion that Muhammad exhibited, whereby SDRI and ICBA joined forces during the past 6 months to put together a concept note that would look at how we can address the impacts of climate change in Somalia and how we can build local resilience. And we have been very lucky that both the Islamic Development Bank and IFAD joined forces with us to support our program. And today's meeting is to share with our participant that initial concept note and what is the vision that we see on moving forward and soliciting your input. So we would start with a presentation whereby I'd like to call Professor Dalmar, who is the chairman of SDRI, and Dr. Asmahan Al-Wafi, who is the Director General of ICBA, who will give you an overview of that program. We also placed on each table, you have the full concept note of that program for your reference. And so, thank you. So I give the floor to you.
So let me apologize first that I have my sunglasses, but they're medical. I broke my other sunglasses, so I need these. I'm not trying to be cool, but that's what it is. Sorry, guys. So, both myself and Abdi are going to give you a very succinct presentation about the proposal, the concept note that you have on the table. So we're going to share the slide as we go. Yeah.
Perfect. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Thank you all for attending this event. I actually would like to thank ICBA, the Islamic Development Bank, IFAD, and others who are present here. And I think this concept note, I will leave the technical details to Dr. Ismahan and for you to actually give us your inputs. But I want to emphasize that it has taken about 6 months of discussions between ICBA, SDRI, and the Somali government. And this concept note has the approval of the Somali government and the Minister of Agriculture. And it is now sitting within the Islamic Development Bank for approval of the concept note. And then we will go to the drawing room to put together a full proposal. And our main objective of today is to share with you, the experts, donors, and others, our concept note so that you can put input into further designing it and further making it perfect. So that's the main objectives that we have.
And maybe before we start, people said that maybe it's a good idea to present the two organizations for those of you that does not know ICBA and SDRI. So I'm going to give just 2 minutes. ICBA stands for International Center Biosaline Agriculture. It's a center that was created by the Islamic Development Bank in the 1999 and hosted by the government of the UAE, with also contribution from IFAD, the Arab Fund for Social and Economic Development, as well as IFAD, OPEC Fund for International Development. So the center has a very niche area. We do research for marginal environments. So we're very particularly focusing on research for areas where you would call it non-arable land in the old days. Yeah, it has to be closer, yeah. So what you would call non-arable land, and in that perspective, we're looking at the whole agriculture system. So we are doing research on the crop per se, and we call them alternative crops. So crops that are forgotten, neglected, you name them, but they're coming all from the biodiversity, and they're different from region to region. We're working a lot on water and water productivity, and increasing and improving the water productivity and water use efficiency, as well as climate change, because most of those marine environments are very, very fragile when it comes to climate change. So ICBA, it's based in Dubai, with most of the people in Dubai itself. However, we implement projects in about 30 countries. We have one office in Tashkent with the PFU unit covering Central Asia and the Caucasus, and we have one office in Ethiopia covering East Africa. So that's in a nutshell. I think we have a brochure about ICBA for people if they want to know more about it. I'll pass it to Abdi to give us more about SDRI.
Thank you, Dr. Ismail. And Somali Disaster Resilience Institute is actually based in Mogadishu, Somalia. It's registered with the Somali government, and you have in your table is a brochure that explains to you SDRI, but in brief, it's a Somali-focused, Somali-based think tank institute that works with the government, the federal government and state governments. It also works with private sector, with international donors, and it has been established in 2013 in Mogadishu, but it has offices in Kenya and also in Kampala, Uganda. And it has a core staff of around 15 and specialists in different areas, because we focus on disaster. And as my colleague Mohammed has shown in his presentation, disaster actually comes from either climate and causes or man-made causes, but it affects the whole social fabric of the society. So we focus on health, we focus on climate change impact, and we focus on integrated water resource management, and we have delivered around 20 projects for the Somali. We have strategic partnership and MOUs with the Somali government. And as you may have heard from the history of Somalia, we had a collapse of the central government, so Somalia is like a laboratory to see how people can survive without a very strong government. And that pushed us to actually have a very strong private sector enterprises in terms of knowledge management. And the Somali government recognizes that, and so the Somali government now encourages institutes like Somali Disaster Resilience Institute to work with them as a knowledge management institute. So we work with the government in drafting policies, in putting together strategic plans, in doing needs assessment, in doing training and capacity building, but also we specialize in monitoring and evaluation. We do a lot of TBM, third-party monitoring, for most donors in Somalia, including DFID, USAID, and UN agencies. And we are very glad to have also an MOU and partnership with ICBA. And our first product is this concept note we are sharing with you today.
Thank you, Abdi. And then, in all honesty, for us, we have been always interested in Somalia. But what was lacking is having an implementer, somebody that we trust that could implement the project. So by finding SDRI, we were very happy to find a strong local organization and institution that could implement the projects in Somalia. So with that, I will just, I'm sorry I have to get there so I can read it as well. So we have a few slides. All the details are on the copies on the table. So I think the reason for low productivity of Somalia are quite similar to many other African countries, and they are quite known to all of us. It goes from the displacement of the labor force, the high level of vulnerability to shocks, and particularly climate shocks, a high incidence of pests and diseases, poor adaptation to strategies, and it was said by Abdi also, not so strong government for several years to put those strategies and implement them, lack of suitable stress-tolerant crop varieties, large post-harvest losses, high environmental degradation, destroyed damage and inadequate infrastructure, the capacity and limited migration planning and disaster response. So they are quite similar to many other conflict regions and to many other African countries as well. So the project is a 3-year project that we have put together, and we looked at many other existing projects in Somalia. So as we were going through this process, we looked at the existing projects, and also we consulted with IFAD, as IFAD is developing 3 different projects for Somalia. Particularly one of them is Somalia and Yemen, and the 2 others are specific to Somalia. So the objective of this project is developing the in-country capacity to use available drought monitoring and early warning system. And the reason is that in Somalia there is the FuseNet program that has been deployed for many years. But when you talk to Somalians, what they are telling us is that FuseNet exists, but we still need other people to generate the maps for us. So there is no internal capacity to use the program, nor to adapt the program, nor to generate the information that they need. They are still receiving it mostly from FAO and other organizations. The second one, the second objective, sorry. So the second objective is to identify areas of most vulnerable to drought under climate condition. Somalia, and Mohammed showed us the map, it's quite big. So we have, because the project is going to be a kind of a pilot to showcase what we can do. So what we thought is that we're going to map the vulnerability first to climate change, and we're going to take few communities that we're going to target for our interventions. And those are going to be a pilot to showcase what could be done in those communities that could be scaled up, hopefully, with other donors. And this is the work that we do, and Makram is with us. He's the expert from that group. It's mostly using models that we have developed with Nebraska University and NASA, and that worked very well in the MENA region. We're going to try them in Somalia. But we try it as well, in Senegal and Mauritania as well. So the third objective, introduce drought-tolerant crops and varietal diversity in combination with climate-smart agriculture, soil and water management packages in those selected area and vulnerable area. So here it's mostly the expertise of ICBA, but also the expert in the universities and SDRI in Somalia, whereby we're going to look at crops. It's going to be mostly forages that we're going to be introducing with some salinity tolerance, drought tolerance, and more adaptable to the livestock that they have in those regions. The fourth one, it's developing the capacity of the Ministry of Agriculture, agricultural workers, and farmers. And that also was really a request from Minister Abdurrahman last year when I met him, the Minister of Finance. He said, really what we need, it's capacity of individuals and capacity of institutions. So we can't, as a country, I think Somalia cannot take aid and also continue to take technical advisory from outside. If we are hearing about the Bosphora, and I was really puzzled yesterday, Abdi told me they have 1,500 doctors that now are in network. So if I go to agriculture, I'm sure we're going to find much more. So there are experts within Somalia and out of Somalia, so we have to form the capacity both of the individual as well as the institution. Yeah, next slide. So the partners, we already mentioned them. I think all of them we have already talked about. The Ministry of Agriculture, the SDRI, ICBA. We will have local NGOs and active farmers with a particular focus on women. And we have other development partners that are involved in Somalia, IDB, IFAD, FAO, WFP, USAID, AU, and others, hopefully, that could join us. There is a lot of complementarity, as I said, with several initiatives that are ongoing right now in Somalia. Like the Dryland program that is funded by IDB and the Solidarity Fund. There is the Drought Resilient and Sustainable Livelihood program in the Horn of Africa that is led by the African Development Bank, the IFAD initiative that I mentioned, and the World Bank initiative, and the Somalia Drought Impact and Need Assessment, and the Recovery and Resilience Framework. So we have looked at all of these to make sure that we are not duplicating a work that is already undertaken by other institutions and other donors. So the targeted area, we have 5 regions that have been chosen by our Somalis partners, and we are targeting 16,000 households in those 10 regions. Yes. And the approach, we have 4 work streams. I'm going to not give you the details, but we do have that information. The first work stream is to optimize the use of existing drought monitoring and early warning system to improve drought impact management and their current and future climate condition. And I want to just here, since we are in Tunis, The project that we have, we are developing a drought monitoring system with USAID in 4 countries, Morocco, Tunisia, Lebanon, and Jordan. And I have to see that Tunis, for example, have now a high-level committee on climate change and drought management, and they are able to produce their own maps every month. So Tunis is one of the most, I would say, active and forthcoming of the 4 countries that are able to take that technology. So this is what we thought for Somalia. Instead of developing a new model, what we're going to look at the FuseNet, the other models that exist, and try to go through a training, but also fine-tuning of the models for the Somalians. Hopefully, we are hoping that within the 3 years, Somalia could have a capacity to develop their own maps and their own information. And that has to be very closely with FAO, of course. Yeah. The next work stream is identify areas vulnerable to drought for project targeting. And that will include generate national level climate change data and maps, characterize the future drought, and downscale the climate change to about hopefully 5 kilometers or at least 15 kilometers. Identify and validate the agriculture area that are most vulnerable to climate change, explore and quantify impact of current and future drought, and hopefully we can find data for the last 40 years that will help us to get the trends. If not, at least from, I think I'm hearing from my colleague, the satellite map, even if we don't have local data, the satellite map and the data in the international organization could help. Assess the soil condition in these target area and applying land degradation surveillance frameworks, and assess available water resources. So it's basically really a work stream whereby we're going to look at the status, what exists, what are the resources, and what are the most vulnerable regions that we will target. The next work stream is develop a climate smart agriculture and water technology packages for the targeted drought-affected area. And here, sincerely, I'm a geneticist myself, so I believe everything is in plants. I know that the water is needed, the soil is needed, but if the plant does not have the gene, and if you don't introduce it, it cannot be expressed. It's like فاقد الشيء لا يعطيه بالعربي. So if the gene is not there, it's not there, the metabolite wouldn't happen, and then the outcome wouldn't be there. So it's very important to choose the right crops. And here we will look at the diversity that exists already in Somalia. Look at the crops that the people accept, that the people like, that the people have been using for thousands and thousands of years, and look how we can help them managing it better. If there is a high salinity, that's the only time where we're gonna introduce the crops that we have in ICBA. So we're gonna start working with the crops from Somalia. If the salinity is very high, that's where our gene bank and the work that we have done in ICBA earlier could be of use to them, and we can introduce new crops. The next work stream is developing the capacity of Somali farmers and agricultural workers in targeted area to adopt and use climate-smart agriculture technologies. And this is a very important next step for us to make sure that the farmer gets the capacity, the extension services, the ministry, SDRI. I'm very happy that the colleague that we are with us here in Somalia, Abdi, he's the chairman of 18 universities, a network of 18 universities. So all this local capacity in Somalia will be very important to help us really reach the farmer, explain the new technologies on the new agriculture system, and get it adopted by them. Yes, next. So the project outputs, we have several here, and they are in the document. New evidence generated on primary impact of current and future drought on agricultural resources and water provision dynamics in Somalia. 20 drought management staff trained to use. I think it's several outputs and several outcomes. I think I better go to the outcomes. So the outcomes: enhancing country capacity in using drought monitoring and early warning system, improved resilience leadership, risk planning and management of drought by the Somali government, strengthen capacity of agriculture staff to support drought-affected communities, improved access to seed for heat, drought, and salt-tolerant crops, enhance awareness and capacity at the community and individual levels to manage the impact of drought. And the impact, the desired impact of the proposal is to improve food and nutrition security and drought resilience of vulnerable communities in Somalia, and the greater stability in rural livelihood and the reduced displacement during drought episode. And I think with the presentation of Mohammed on the private sector, we haven't really factored the private sector in the concept note, and that's one of the things that we have discussed yesterday. It's how to bring the private sector from the seed multiplication to the post-harvest used and processing of the crops. So I think, thank you very much. I hope that I have given enough ideas on the proposal. We are sorry if we didn't share it with you earlier, but we will be happy to share it with you. And I let Seta explain to you the next stage. Unless Abdi, you want to add something?
No, I think you have covered it, but I just wanted to conclude for the audience that, as you have seen, we are trying to actually work with different levels of the Somali society. We'll be working with the farmers at the field level, at the chosen areas. We'll be working with professionals to train them in using maps or generating maps or using these smart and climate smart crops, but we'll work with the government also system. So we are trying to work comprehensively through different levels of the Somali society. But our overall objective is actually to have an exit strategy so that we don't create dependency, but once this project is finished its cycle, we have a sustainable services that are going on after our project ends, which is what is lacking in Somalia. We have seen in Somalia outpouring of emotions. We have seen aid delivered. We have seen wells generated, hospitals built. But once the project ends, they also end. So we are conscious of that. We want to work with the Somali people, give them capacity to withstand the drought, which is a natural system, but to lead a normal life and stand on their feet. This is what we are looking for. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. So we move now to the next phase of our seminar today. Before that, I just want to say my cards are here. If anyone wants a copy of the concept note electronically, please feel free to grab a card and just send me an email and I will send it to you. So the next session is going to be an interactive one. So we presented the idea of the project. We're going to use the format which is called World Cafe format. We have 3 tables. Each table is going to be dedicated for a specific theme. We have a facilitator for each table. Can the facilitators please stand up? Asmahan? So these are the facilitators for the table. Each of the participants, you would be moving through the table. So you would have 10. Asmahan is the facilitator for this table. Yeah. So, yeah. So you would be changing. I would ask participants, I would be the timer. I will tell you once 10 minutes elapsed, and each participant will rotate. We would rotate anti-clockwise so that each participant has 10 minutes at each table. At the table, we have the first table here is going to be discussing prospects of partnership with Somalia among the IDB member countries. And here we realize that there are other countries who have had similar programs. So if anyone knows of such a program where we can do linkages with or we can exchange lessons learned, this would be the topic of discussion at this table number 1. Table number 2 will be discussing the role, that's number 2, which is discussing the role of the international organizations in supporting Somalia. So as you saw from Asmahan's presentation, we did map some of the local efforts that are happening in Somalia, but probably we missed some. So if you are aware of any other local programs that are happening in Somalia that we need to be aware of, we would appreciate if you can communicate that to the facilitator. And table number 3 here would be discussing challenges for building resilience to drought and climate change impact in Somalia. And this directly relates to the 4 activities that Asmahan outlined. If there are any other activities that you think or areas that we missed that would have been useful to include in the concept note. The facilitators would be recording your comments, and as you move from table to table, the facilitator will tell you exactly what were the key agreement points of your colleagues, predecessors who decided on this, so that you build on that discussion. Okay, so we start. I will give you 10 minutes, so go ahead. It doesn't matter, because everyone is going to be going around. Yes. Yeah. So Asmahan, you need to start here. Everyone is going around. Amal is taking it. Okay. Okay. Time. No, you don't move. They move you. Yes. So yes. This is your shop. This is your cafe. So I want to ask groups to start wrapping up. You have 1 minute before everyone moves. So now please, everyone, attention, attention. I need the facilitators to stay at their table and everyone rotates anti-clockwise. So this table, please move to that table. Okay. Okay. So, excuse me, you need to all move to this table. Okay, I need everyone at this table except Ahmad to move to this table, please. No, no. No, because you need to explain to others. The others are working on the flip charts. Hi, Hamad. Okay. لا 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 مش انه في flip charts انتوا تنقلوا الفاسيليتيترز بيقعدوا محلهم. Okay? Okay? So please انت خليك محلك, everyone else moves. They need some exercise. Yes. So please to this one. Okay. Okay. Okay, so facilitators, to the facilitators, please, each facilitator gives an update to their group. So, okay, so your 10 minutes start now.
facilitators, you need to start wrapping up the session with this group. So I now want to ask the participants to start moving to the next table. Okay, half a minute. Colleagues, shall we move? So each participant has to move to the third table that he has not sat on or she has not sat on. Okay, so shall we start? The clock starts ticking now. Okay, so we need to wrap up. We need to wrap up because we need to deliver the whole in 20 minutes. So I'd like to ask each of the facilitators to give a report to the rest of the group on the main topics discussed at their table. So shall we wrap? We're time out, time out. Okay, are we okay? So. We need to wrap up. Especially with the troublemaker. So for anyone who still has some comments, you have my email. Please email me, and I'll make sure they are integrated into the report document. Table number 1, Amal, can you?
Okay, this table discussed the prospects of partnership with Somalia and IDB member countries. So how can other member countries of IDB provide support to Somalia? And basically, there are two, most of the two opportunities that we identified. One of them is developing experiences from other IDB member states, for example, in Jordan, water ambassadors, remote water efficiency in their communities. The other one is provide giving advisory services from technical, from producers who understand the region better than parts of the world, and therefore would support technical services in Somalia with building their capacity and information sharing, lesson learned, etc. We've also talked about where sources of funding would come from. Now, IDB, for example, faces difficulty getting loans to Somalia because of the economic situation there. However, there are grant opportunities. Recently, $5 million to provide a project in Somalia, which is unfortunately slow moving because of local capacity limitations. Capacity limitations is one of the things that we are proposing is planning to address. We've talked about opportunities to explore, for example, the Green Climate Fund, which has been difficult in the past, but is apparently becoming easier. IDB mentioned the reverse linkage grant mechanism, which supports South-South cooperation, and also convene other donors and partners to co-finance grants provided to the reverse linkage, for example, GIZ, African Development Bank. One of the things that African Development Bank does is a grant for countries in transition, such as Somalia. purchases their crops from them to distribute in areas which require emergency assistance, and also encourages the government and the private sector to provide financial assistance. I think that's about it.
So, Ahmed, number 2 minutes.
So the question was on the role of international organizations. What could they do better or differently? And we're told to leave the room. So 2 minutes. Okay. So very quickly, the thing is that it was identified that a lot of the focus of the international organizations has been on the public sector, which is ineffective, which has been ineffective, and even IFAD highlighted that they're struggling to even give more money because they're not paying the debts. So what was really highlighted and predominant that there should be much focus on the private sector and civil society as the actual effective players in the country. And 4 things were identified that they should focus on: limiting the risk for this private sector, enabling their access to finance and helping them to access the existing finance, and increasing their capacity, plus focusing on the results that could be produced rather just than the money that goes in. So I'll pass on to table number 3. So that.
Thank you very much. Group number 3 basically looked at the challenges of resilience building and climate change effects in Somalia. So in summary, the group is they talked about there is a limited or lack of knowledge around rain and water harvesting policies for farmers in Somalia, in particular the vulnerable groups. They also talked about improving coordination and networking among the donors to make sure that there is no duplication. Also, they talked about strengthening community frameworks and making sure community cohesion is strengthened. They also talked about using crops that are water efficient, and in particular nutritional crops that can improve nutrition status of the communities. They talked about need for investment, long-term investment, and especially around the irrigation infrastructure in the country. And very interestingly, they suggested the creation of diaspora bond that will attract investments from from the large Somali diaspora in Abu. So those were the key highlights of what the team discussed.
Sure. My name is Haida Bouza. I'm from IFAD, International Fund for Agricultural Development, and we work in 100 countries, and we are a financing institution. Just to wrap up, to take away some key messages from where I said. I was listening to all the challenges that were presented today, and for me, looking at the magnitude and how they impact the livelihood of the rural people and the people in general of Somalia, it was obvious for me that one institution, being IFAD or the World Bank or Islamic Bank, cannot address the challenges alone. We need to join our efforts, otherwise we cannot help to solve the problem of Somalia. The other point I would like to take from the working group also is the issue of sustainability. If we want to have a sustainable impact and to solve the problem once and for good, climate change is the entry point for sure. Water is one other one, but we need the private sector if we want our project to survive to our financing. We have an ongoing design that will coordinate with the ICBA project, which is Food Security Promotion Project for pastoralists and agro-pastoralists in Puntland. And obviously this project will coordinate with the ongoing project under design. And the idea would be to have either a joint steering committee or joint supervision, but certainly to complement each other. And we thank you with that. I hope it was fast enough.